All right. Hey guys, so in the last video, we finished with you solving this problem on your own. So I'm just going to kind of do it, show you how to do it. You can check to see if you did it right. Now we're factoring this problem. So remember, what does factoring mean? Factoring means turning something into a multiplication problem. So we're going to turn this into a multiplication problem. And remember, what goes here, the first two terms have to multiply to give me x squared. So what multiplies to give me x squared? X times x. And then the last terms have to multiply to give you the last term, but add to give you the middle term. And I have that here. So let's figure out, first you always want to figure out what multiplies to give me 16. Well, I'm going to write out all the factors of that. We got 1 times 16 is 16, 2 times 8, 3 does not go into 16 evenly, but 4 does, so 4 times 4, 5 doesn't, 6 doesn't. If you keep going, these are the only factors of 16. So out of these, you have to figure out, we figured out what multiplies to give us the last term. We just did that. All these multiply to give me the last term, but which one of them adds to give you the middle term? So the middle term is 10. So 1 plus 16 is 17. We don't want that. 2 plus 8 is 10. We do want that. So this is the guy we're going to use. And then there's 4 plus 4, which is 8. So you have to figure out which one of these adds to give you 10. Well, it's 2 and 8. So it's going to be positive 2 and positive 8. So that's what you should have got on the last problem. So we're going to do, we're going to add in a little trickier step, I guess you'd say. So we're going to throw some negatives in there. We did this with both positives. Now we're going to throw in a negative. So same thing, we're going to factor, which means we're going to turn it in to a multiplication problem. And the first terms, the things that go here, have to multiply to give me the first term. So what times what gives me x squared? X times x. And then the last terms that go here, these have to multiply to give me 12, but add to give me, now it's not 8, it's negative 8 now. So we're going to write out the factors. Always write out the factors of 12. What gives me 12? Well, 1 times 12 gives me 12. 2 times 6 gives me 12. 3 times 4 gives me 12, and that's it. These are all the factors. These are two numbers that multiply to give me the last term. So we did that, but now we have to figure out which one of these adds to give me the middle term. Now our middle term is negative 8. If we add all of these are all positive numbers, we're going to get positive numbers. So we say adds, but if we throw some negatives in there, it will work. So we can say what adds to give me the middle term, or we can technically say subtract, because adding a negative is the same thing. So 12 minus 1 plus 12 doesn't work. 1 minus 12 doesn't work. 2 plus 6 gives me 8, but it doesn't give me negative 8. So how could we turn that? We do want 8, so we are going to use the 2 and the 6. And it's going to be plus. 2 plus 6 is 8, but we want it to be negative 8. So what can I do to get it to be negative 8? I can make this negative. But if I make that negative, I'll still get 4. So we got to make them both negative. And the two negatives will multiply to give me 12, because two negatives make a positive. And this will add to give me negative 8. So this is what we're going to use. So it's going to be, now it's not 2 and 6, it's negative 2 and negative 6. And I know that might seem a little confusing, so let me show you why it works. We're going to check our answer. This is our answer, right? This is the factored form. We need to distribute. X times x is x squared. X times negative 6 is negative 6x. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And negative 2 times negative 12. The two negatives make positive 12. I think I just said 12. 2 times 6 is 12. Then you combine the middle terms because they're like terms, and you get x squared. Negative 6 minus 2 is negative 8. X plus 12. And this matches the original problem. So it gets trickier when you throw in some negatives. Let's try another one. comes there. So this one, same thing, we're factoring, so we're going to turn it into a multiplication problem. The first terms have to multiply to give you x squared, so we know it's going to be x times x. And then the last terms have to multiply to give you, now it's going to be negative 21, but they have to add to give you 4. So first we're just going to write out the factors of 21. We'll worry about the negative later. So 1 times 21 is 21. 2 doesn't go into 21, but 3 does. 3 times 7 gives me 21. And that's it. Those are the factors of 21. Now it needs to be a negative. So for me to get a negative here, one of these has to be negative. So it's either going to be negative 1 in 21 or 1 times negative 21. One of those gives me that. Or it could be negative 3 times 7 or 3 times negative 7. We have to have one negative. We can't have two because then they'll cancel out, but we need to have one negative. So it could be any of these. So out of these options, which one adds, or you can technically say subtract because of the negative, to give me 4? Well, if we check this, we check this guy, 1 plus, also I'll do it, negative 1 plus 21, that gives me 20. We don't want that, so no to that guy. We'll do this guy, 1 plus negative 21, that gives me negative 20. We don't want negative 20, we want 4, so that's no good. This guy, negative 3 plus 7, that gives me 4, which is what we want, right? We want 4. And if you did want to check that one, you would get 3 plus negative 7, which will give you negative 4. We don't want negative because there's a positive sign right here. So out of all these, negative 3 times 7 multiplied to give me negative 21, and it also adds to give me the middle number. So it's going to be negative 3, oh, sorry, it's so ugly, negative 3 and positive 7. You can only have one negative. Let me show you why it works. When we distribute out, because that's what we're really doing in our head, we're doing it backwards, x times x turns into x squared. X times 7 turns into 7x. And then you distribute the negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And the negative 3 times 7 is negative 21. So then you combine the middle terms and you get x squared. 7x minus 3x is positive 4x minus 21. So it does match my original problem. Now, if you made this positive 3 and this negative 7, it would multiply to give me negative 21, but it wouldn't add. It would add to give you negative 4, so you don't want that. So you got to be very careful with your signs. The negative has to go on the 3 in this case. All right, let's try another one. Let's make it a little bit trickier. Maybe the negatives are already tricky enough. It's taking forever to load. All right, so this one, I threw a different letter in there just to confuse you a little bit. We're factoring the polynomial. This is a polynomial. It's actually a trinomial because there's 3 terms. We're still just factoring, which means we're going to turn it in to a multiplication problem. And it's still the same process. So first term that goes here and here, that goes here and here, they have to multiply to give me z squared. So now it's on x. What multiplies to give me z squared? Well, z times c gives me z squared. And then the last terms that goes here and here, they have to, remember it's all right here, we have to figure out the 2 numbers that multiply to give me the last term. In this case, our last term is negative 56. And adds to give me the middle term. Now, the middle term, what is that middle number there? It's not z. Z is not a number. There's an automatic 1 there. I did that on purpose so that you can remember that rule. So we need to figure out what multiplies to give me 56 first. Let's try it. We got 1 times 56. 2 times, if you don't know what goes into it, you could just take your calculator and divide by 2. So You can just say, okay, well, let's see if 2 goes into it. It does because it's even. Okay, and you divide here, you'll get 28. So 2 times 28. If you want to check 3, you can say 56 divided by 3, and you're going to get a decimal, so you know that doesn't work. And then you keep trying. You can try 4, and you will get 4 times 14 is 56. Now, if you don't know how to do that, just take the 56 and say, let's divide it by 4, and let's see if it goes into evenly, and you will get 14. 5 doesn't go into 56. 6 doesn't go into 56. 7, my brain is all but 7 times 8 gives me 56. And let's see, 56, and you can just divide by 9. Nope, 9 doesn't work. So we're done. There's no, I don't think there's, I'm going to check 12 real quick. 12 doesn't go into it. So these are the factors of 56, but it's negative, which means one of these has to be negative, or one of these have to be negative, or one of these have to be negative. So we're going to focus. We figured out what 2 numbers multiply to give me the last term, but we're having what adds to give me the middle term. Now we can change that adds to adds or subtracts, and we just need to figure out where that subtraction sign goes. So we want it to be them to add to be -1. And then we have to throw a negative on one of these. So if you do that, you're going to get 1 plus 56, 57. That's not even close to 1. Even if you subtract it, you'll get 55, which is not even close. I'm going to just erase this real quick. Whatever. If we try to do 2 and 28, 2 plus 28 is 30. We don't want 30, we want -1. 28 minus 2 is 26. It's still not even close to 1. So we're going to be looking for the numbers that are close together, and that will give us adds or subtracts to give us 1. So here we have 7 and 8. Well, 7 plus -8 is -1, which is what we want. If you put the negative on the 7, 7 plus 8, you would get 1. We don't want +1, we want -1. So these are the numbers we're going to use. We're going to put the negative on the 8. And 7 times -8 is -56. And 7 plus -8 is -1, which is 1. So we're going to have +7 because it's positive, and we're going to use -8 here. So it's going to be -8 there. So it gets tricky when we have a lot of factors and when there's negatives involved. So be very careful where you put that negative. So my answer is z, that's a z. Z plus 7 times z minus 8. And to check it, you distribute. Z times z is z squared. Z times -8 is -8z. 7 times z is 7z. And 7 times -8 is -56. You combine like terms. Z squared can't be combined with anything, so we bring him down. -8z plus 7z is -1z, and you bring down the -56. And this does match the original problem, so we know we did it right. This is me checking my answer. The final answer for factoring is this guy. Z plus 7, z minus 8. And I've got one more that I just want to practice because it does get trickier. Here's another one. So we're going to try this. We're factoring, or maybe I should have you try this on your own. We're going to turn this into a multiplication problem. The first terms have to multiply to give me f squared. Now we're using f. So what times what gives me f squared? Well, f times f gives me f squared. And what times what gives me -40, but adds to give me -3. Now remember, it could be adds or subtracts if we're talking about negatives here. So let's first start with 40. What multiplies? So these two numbers have to multiply to give me 40. Well, 1 times 40. 2 times 20. Remember, if you don't know how to figure that out, just divide 40 by 2 and it'll give you 20. 40 divided by 3 doesn't work, so you just move on to 4. Okay, so 4 times 10 gives me 40. 5 times 8 gives me 40. 6 doesn't go into it, 7 doesn't, 8. So here's our factors. These are what multiplies to give me 40. Now, one of them, it's negative 40. So one of these have to be negative, one of these have to be negative, one of these, or one of these. So one of them has to be negative. We need to figure out where the negative sign goes. And when we do that, we'll kind of figure out, we'll get negative 3 from it. So is 1 and 40, if we add or subtract those, going to give me 3? No. So we're not going to use him. No. 2 plus 20 is 22. 20 minus 2, that doesn't give me anything close to 3, so we're not going to use him. 4 and 10, 4 plus 10 is 14. We want 3. 10 minus 4 is 6. We still want 3, so that doesn't work. But the 5 and 8 is going to work. 5 plus 8 is not what we want. But we could do 8 minus 5, and we'll get 3. But we want negative 3. So this is what we're going to use, because we'll get, if we add or subtract these, we'll get 3. But we want negative 3. So are we going to choose 5 plus negative 8? Or are we going to make the 5 negative? Are we going to say negative 5 plus 8? Which one of these will give me the negative 3? Well, 5 plus 8 is negative 3, which is what we want. And negative 5 plus 8 is positive 3. So we're going to use this guy. This is the one we're going to want because we want the negative 3. So it's going to be positive 5 because we're using positive 5. And we're going to use negative 8. So it's going to be minus 8. This factors to give me that. Now remember, if you put the negative on the 8, you're going to get, if you put the negative on the 5, you're going to get this problem, and you're going to get a 3 in the middle. We don't want a 3, we want a negative 3. So how do we check our work? We distribute out or multiply. So let's multiply. F times F is F squared. F times negative 8, negative 8F. 5 times F is 5F. And 5 times negative 8 is negative 40. You combine the middle terms because those are like terms. Negative 8F plus 5F is negative 3F, which is what we wanted. So if you put the wrong answer and then you check it and you realize you don't have the same right answer, maybe check your signs first. And that might be your problem. So be very careful with that. So that's a little bit trickier. When you have negatives, you really have to think of what adds or subtracts. So you can change that to adds or subtracts. The subtraction sign would just be considered your negative sign.